Some roads feel different after dark, not because they look unusual, but because of the stories attached to them. Tonight, the Midnight Drive takes a detour off the highway, down a narrow road outside Burlington, Iowa. A road that winds through trees and disappears into a quiet valley. There's a bridge there. Easy to miss if you're not looking for it. But locals will tell you the same thing. If you stop your car on that bridge after midnight, turn off your lights, and sit in the silence, you might start to notice something. A sound, a movement, a feeling that you can't quite explain. And if you stay there long enough, you might begin to wonder if you're really alone. Outside of the city of Burlington, Iowa, there's a stretch of road that doesn't stand out during the day. It's called Stony Hollow Road, a narrow winding route that cuts through the wooded valley just beyond the edge of town. If you drive it in the daylight, it feels like any other rural road. Trees lining both sides, the occasional curve, sunlight filtering through the branches. It's quiet, but it's not unusual. The kind of road that you might take without thinking twice. But like many places tied to local folklore, the atmosphere changes at night. Streetlights disappear. The road becomes darker, quieter. And that sense of isolation becomes more noticeable. Once the sun goes down, the valley seems to close in. The trees feel taller, closer. The road narrows in your perception, even if it hasn't physically changed at all. And the farther you drive, the more the outside world seems to fall away. Drivers who take Stony Hollow Road after dark often describe a subtle shift. It's nothing dramatic, and it's nothing that you can point to directly. Just a feeling that the space around you has become more enclosed, more contained. The silence feels deeper, more complete. And it's the kind of silence that makes you more aware of every small sound. The hum of your engine, the tires against the pavement, the faint movement of leaves in the wind. Every detail becomes more noticeable, and somewhere along that road, there's a bridge. It's not large, not the kind of structure that stands out. There's no dramatic drop, no rushing river beneath it. It's just a small crossing over a shallow ravine. Easy to miss it entirely if you're driving through quickly, but that bridge is where the stories begin. Like many local legends, the exact origin isn't entirely clear. There's no single version that everybody agrees on. Instead, there are variations, different details, different explanations. Some say the story began with a car accident many years ago, a late-night crash on that stretch of road. Others claim a young woman died near the bridge under tragic circumstances. In some tellings, she was walking along the road alone. In others, she was involved in an accident and never made it out of the valley. The details shift depending on who you ask. But over time, one name began to attach itself to the story. Lucinda. No one can say for certain where that name came from, and there are no official records clearly tied to the legend. No documented event that confirms the story in a definitive way, but just like many local legends, the name persists, passed from one person to the next, attached to that place, becoming part of the story itself. And with that name came something else, a ritual, something that people began to test. According to the legend, if you stop your car on the bridge after midnight and you turn off your lights and say the name Lucinda 3 times, something might happen. Some versions say that you'll hear footsteps. Others say you might feel a presence nearby. But one of the most widely repeated parts of the story involves something more specific. A rose. People say that if you call her name 3 times, a rose might fall at your feet. And if that happens, it's not a gift. It's a warning. A sign that something is about to go very wrong. That your time might be shorter than you think. It's the kind of detail that feels familiar because it echoes something deeper in storytelling. Urban legends have a way of repeating patterns. Say a name, look into a mirror, repeat a phrase, and something appears. You hear this in stories like Bloody Mary or Candyman. Rituals tied to repetition, to invitation, to crossing a line between the ordinary world and something else. And while the story of Lucinda may not be unique in structure, the fact that it's tied to a real place gives it a different kind of weight, because you can actually go there. You can drive that road. You can stand on that bridge, and you can test it for yourself. And that's exactly what people do, especially at night, especially in groups. Friends daring each other, seeing who will actually say the name. Who will stay on the bridge the longest? Who will step out of the car and stand alone in the dark? Because the real power of a story like this isn't whether or not it's true. It's the experience of participating in it. Driving down that road, slowing as you approach the bridge, the headlights cutting through the darkness, the trees closing in around you, and then stopping. Turning off the engine, letting the silence settle in. At that point, something shifts. Even if nothing actually happens, because once you are there, the story becomes part of the experience. Every sound feels amplified. Every shadow feels more defined. And your mind begins to fill in the gaps. That's how places like Stony Hollow Road become part of local folklore. Not through proof, not through documentation, but through repetition, through shared experience, through the simple act of people going there and wondering, and whether or not anything is actually waiting on that bridge. The feeling is real. The atmosphere is real. And the story continues. Because as long as people keep driving down that road after midnight, as long as someone is willing to stop on that bridge and say the name out loud, the legend doesn't go away. It just waits for the next person to test it. What do you make of this? Have you ever been out to Stony Hollow Bridge? If you have you played the game? Let us know in the comments below, or reach out to us on our hotline at the Midnight Drive, 402-610-2836. You're listening to The Midnight Drive. Welcome back. Tonight on The Midnight Drive, we're talking about Stony Hollow Bridge in Burlington, Iowa. You know, there's something about bridges in folklore. They mark transitions. One place to another. One side to the next. And because of that, they often become the center of stories. The bridge on Stony Hollow Road is no different. It's the point where people stop. The point where curiosity turns into action. Late at night, drivers will sometimes pull onto the bridge and turn off their headlights, letting the darkness settle around them. The trees form a canopy overhead. The road disappears behind them. And for a moment, the world becomes very still. No passing cars, no distant lights, just the sound of the wind moving through the valley. This is usually when people begin to notice things. At first, it's the silence. Not the normal quiet of a rural road, but something deeper, a kind of absence. As though the usual background noise of the world has just been lowered. Then come the small details, the faint rustling of leaves, the creak of branches shifting, the occasional sound of something moving in the distance. All of it is explainable, and all of it is ordinary. But in that setting, for just a moment, it feels different. It's more focused. It's more deliberate. Some visitors say they've heard footsteps. They're not loud. They're not rushed. They're just slow, measured steps on the pavement, coming from behind the car, approaching, stopping. And when they step out to look, there's nothing there. Others report something more physical, a slight movement of the car, a gentle rocking, as if someone has leaned against it or rested a hand on the back. And again, there are logical explanations. Wind, weight distribution, the natural settling of a parked vehicle. But in that complete darkness, those explanations don't always come first. A few stories describe something visual. A shape at the edge of the trees. A figure standing just beyond the reach of the headlights. Standing still. Watching. Visible for only a moment, before blending back into the shadows. Skeptics point out that the human brain is wired to find patterns, especially faces, especially figures. In low light, the brain fills in missing information, turning shadows into shapes, branches into silhouettes, movement into presence. And when you're already expecting something unusual, the effect becomes stronger. We've talked about this before on the show. But what makes the Stony Hollow legend interesting isn't just the experience, it's the ritual attached to it. The idea that you can do something so specific, say a name, repeat it 3 times, and invite the story to respond. That structure feels familiar for a reason. It's because it appears again and again in folklore, across different places, different cultures, different generations. Say the name, open the door, invite something in. Again, stories like Bloody Mary and Candyman. Simple rituals tied to repetition, tied to intention, tied to the idea that certain actions can trigger something unseen. And in that sense, the story of Lucinda fits into a much larger tradition. It might not be entirely original, no, and it might not have a clearly documented origin. But that's part of what makes it so effective, because it feels recognizable and at the same time personal, local, grounded in a specific place you can actually visit. You don't have to imagine it. You can drive there. You can stand on that bridge, and you can decide for yourself whether or not you're going to say the name. And that's where the story gains its edge, because once you're there, it doesn't feel like a story anymore. It feels like a possibility. Even if nothing happens, even if the night stays quiet, even if only sounds are coming from the wind and the trees, the experience still lingers. Because the mind keeps working, replaying the moment, questioning what you heard, what you may have saw, what you might have imagined. And the drive back feels different. The road feels a little bit longer. The trees feel like they're a little bit closer, and the silence doesn't feel quite the same. Because once a place has a story attached to it, you don't experience it the same way again. Stony Hollow Road isn't marked as anything unusual. There are no signs, no official warnings, no confirmed history that explains the legend in a definitive way. And that's often how these stories survive, not through proof, but through persistence, through people returning, people testing the story, people sharing what they experienced and passing it on. And whether or not there ever was a Lucinda, whether or not anything truly happened on that bridge, the story remains waiting. Waiting for the next car to pull over at midnight. Waiting for the next voice to say that name out loud. Waiting for the next moment of silence, where someone listens just a little too closely. Tonight, the midnight drive took a turn off the highway, down a road that most people would pass without a second thought. But places like this are everywhere. Quiet, unmarked, waiting. And sometimes, all it takes is a story to change the way they feel forever.